Welcome to Wrestling with Heart, a podcast looking at pro wrestlers giving back to their community. Join me, Stanley Carr, as I interview wrestling's hottest names who use their platforms as entertainers to raise awareness and do community service. Hello and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Heart. This is the show where we talk with professional wrestlers and professional wrestling personalities about their lives in and outside of the ring, as well as doing acts of charity work, community service, volunteering, and spreading positivity. We're always about the positive vibes here on the show. And with me today, I've got a very special guest. He is back for our second interview, our first guest that has returned and has been on the show before. Pleased to welcome back to the show Dr. Jeremy Housewright. He is the author of the brand new book, For the Love of the Show 2, More Stories from Pro Wrestling Fans. This is an incredible book, by the way, so I hope you all get a chance to check it out. Thank you so much, Jeremy, for coming back. I'm looking forward to talking with you.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. So you and I talked last time, growing up in the Midwest, huge wrestling fan. Your dad took you to the Kiel Auditorium to see pro wrestling there. What is it about wrestling to you that made you, got you hooked?
I think it is just the storytelling. If done right, as we saw last year with the whole Cody Rhodes story, it can enthrall the audience and captivate you week in and week out, looking for that payoff. And that is what has always attracted me to pro wrestling. I mean, I love the athleticism and the spectacle of it, but it's honestly the storytelling. Being a storyteller myself, that's what draws me to it.
Yeah, and it's all about the cliffhangers. As kids, we grew up watching, whether it was 80s WWF or the Attitude Era or the Ruthless Aggression Era, and even to the present. I mean, when you tune on to an episode of Raw, you're seeing the stuff, we're recording this during WrestleMania week, but the stuff involving Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman and CM Punk and Seth Rollins. People want to know what's happening there. Because that is a hot story. People are talking about it. You just mentioned the stuff with Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns from last year. I mean, that was such a monumental storyline, the way they pulled that off, and The Rock being featured in as well. So it's definitely about leaving those viewers interested in what's happening next. Those little details are very vital to professional wrestling.
Absolutely.
Now, you had talked to me before about some of the favorite wrestlers you grew up watching. I remember you talked about Hogan, getting to meet him. What was that like?
The first time I got to meet Hulk, it was very early in the morning, and it was at WrestleMania 30 in New Orleans. And we had to get up at like 5 a.m. to go get in line to meet him, even though I had a ticket to meet him at the WWE Fan Experience. And it was cool, man. It was for me, it was just a kind of a bucket list thing because I had looked up to him as a kid, and to finally get to meet him, it was definitely a highlight. And then last summer? Yeah, last summer he was here in St. Louis doing an appearance for his All-American beer. So I went out again, and knowing what I know now about him, though, it's kind of, I guess it's kind of tainted a little bit, because he's not got the best reputation. But still, to get to meet someone that was my childhood hero was still a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, it's always good when you meet one of your heroes and getting a chance to talk with them, get a picture. It is a thrill. And what was it about Hogan growing up that just really made you go, "Wow, this is so amazing"?
I think the fact that he was like a superhero, that's what they built him as, the train, eat your vitamins, say your prayers. Those things resonated with me as a kid. And, when you're a kid, you're always looking for that person to look up to emulate. And for me, it was Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, I mean, he was this larger than life superhero, as you said, who was just attracted so many people. to really get behind him. His matches with Andre the Giant, his team, and eventual feud with Macho Man
Yeah.
remains one of the all-time greatest moments in the WWF, WWE. Even his stuff with The Rock later on
Yeah.
was so iconic.
That's what I was going to point out. I thought, they just showed a flashback to that, I think on SmackDown the other night. And I can't believe it's been 23 years since that match because I can remember where I was, what I was doing that night, where I watched it. Because to me, that was the highlight for my probably fandom of pro wrestling, getting to see The Rock, who I love to death, and then Hogan kind of passing the reins to him. That was an experience. And then knowing the story behind it, how the crowd had flipped and how they kind of worked to cater to the crowd. To me, that's just, again, it's expert storytelling.
It is, and especially the psychology behind everything that they're
Mm-hmm.
doing, just really makes for an incredible, incredible feud.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's the whole thing. You had the Hogan with the NWO, but we all wanted him to go back to the red and yellow. And, The Rock was the people's champ. So it was just, you couldn't go wrong with it.
Do you remember? You'd mentioned like where you were, what you were doing. You want to elaborate on that?
I was just so I had a friend of the family. He was actually my mom's friend, and he would always order the pay-per-views. So I would go over to his house and throw down half the money and hang out. We'd order pizza or something and just hang out and watch them. So that's where I was that night. I'll never forget that.
Those are always fun, getting the chance to watch the events with your friends, have
Yeah,
pizza, and it really is like it's an experience. There's
absolutely.
there's nothing like it in the world. All right. So you got the book for the love of the show too. We had you on talking about the first one.
Mhm.
What made you decide to write a sequel?
So when I was finishing up the first book, there were a couple stories that I wanted to get in that book, and I just didn't have time. The first chapter of the new book is about the wrestling club, and if you're not familiar with them, it's Victor Perry's a teacher in Brooklyn, New York, and he started a club for his seventh grade students where they literally get together and study professional wrestling. It is one of the coolest things ever. And so I had to tell that story, being a teacher myself, and always thinking about how it would be so cool to have something like that and be able to do that, and just the story behind it and what it's doing for those kids of who live in inner city Brooklyn. It's something very cool to watch and hear about.
Yeah, I definitely remember a few years ago on Instagram, I believe, I saw a video of Big E
Yeah.
going to one of the club meetings, and to see the reaction from the kids getting excited to meet their hero.
Hmm.
That's like, it provides you with this feeling of joy that,
Yes.
you can't really find anywhere else,
Yeah.
because there's how many times can you say you met somebody that you looked up to?
Right.
I also saw Mercedes Monet
Yeah.
show up there as well. So it really,
Yeah. It was really cool because as I was getting ready to wrap the book, there was a story on the group on ESPN, and they actually had Sheamus and somebody else was with them. Oh, Drew McIntyre went and visited with the kids and spent a day with them. So I was like, oh, it's kind of mowing my lawn there, but it was still very cool to see. And having worked with Drew in the past, interviewing him and stuff, I just know what a great guy he is and how cool that would have been for those kids to hang out with him.
yeah. It's amazing to see uh, the faces of these kids getting to
Yeah.
not only meet their idols, but also hear stories from them, and inspirational stories. And what you're doing is you're telling these stories. 11 chapters, if I'm not mistaken, are in
Yes.
this book. Um, what have been some of your favorite highlights while writing the sequel to the original?
That's a great question. I really, the honest to God's truth is every chapter means something to me. Um, I feel like this book overall is heads and tails above the first. And not that I dislike the first. I spent a lot of time on this one though, really getting to know each individual that I talked to, and spending a lot of time on perfecting their stories and making sure that they were true to what they were trying to convey to me. And, you know, if I had to pick some, I would say the final chapter of the book really means a lot to me. It's about a lady named Emily from California, and she's currently battling stage 4 cancer. And there was a video that kind of surfaced on the internet a while back of Kevin Owens leaving the ring after a SmackDown and going up into the crowd and giving a lady a t-shirt signed by him. Well, it turns out that was her. So I reached out to her and told her story, and it really had a profound impact on me. So that one, and then Nick Mason, who is a gentleman from the UK. I happened to see him on Facebook or something one time earlier. I think it was later last year, kind of November-ish. Actually, it was 23, end of 23. And he was talking about how he had done DDP yoga and lost a bunch of weight. So I reached out to him because I love DDP. I think he's a great guy. The things that he does for people is, next to sainthood as far as I'm concerned. And just talking to Nick and hearing his story and hearing how DDP literally called him to check in on him and took a personal interest in him, it was a great story. And it actually, at that point in my life, motivated me to go on a health journey myself, which I'm still on, but it's helped me to start a weight loss journey where I'm up to 130 pounds lost now.
Congratulations.
And I've become kind of a motivational tool for others because every morning I work out, I post on social media a photo, and people come up to me all the time like, man, we love to see you working out. It motivates us to get up in the morning and do it. So it's kind of started a chain reaction. And that's something that I'm very proud of. I think that, like I said, just every story in the book has some type of connection to me and means something to me personally. And that's why I included these stories, all 11 of them, in this book. And I really think that people will be inspired by reading this, and it's going to motivate them to go out and just try to make the world a better place.
Yeah, and the fact that you're on this journey and you were able to hook up with so many people, networking with them
Mm-hmm.
and finding out what they have done and how they've been able to achieve the things that they've been able to achieve, and you're able to take that and apply it into your own life. That in itself is inspiring in its own right, because um, you can learn something from so many of these people and learn so many things from these anecdotes that you're
Mm-hmm.
sharing. So kudos to you for being able to do that.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the big thing behind this one is I want people who aren't even wrestling fans to be able to pick this book up and enjoy it. And I know they will. And so it's something that means a lot to me. And I feel a deep connection to it. And like I said, I'm still in touch with everyone I've talked to in the book, even the young guy in Africa who I write about. So I'm in touch with, I talk to probably two or three of the individuals in the book at least once or twice a week now. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, you had talked about the Nigerian bloodline in the
Yeah.
book, one of those chapters in this version. How did you get in touch with them, and how did that come about? Because I remember seeing those videos on social media.
Yeah. Well, that's where I saw the video, his very first video. I think it was him emulating Roman Reigns' entrance during WrestleMania 39, and I thought, man, this is. I had no idea he was from Nigeria. I figured he was, from somewhere in the U.S. So I started doing some research, and it took me a while to find out anything about him because no one really knew. And eventually, an article, a small blurb had popped up on a wrestling website that WWE had sent him a few titles, and I saw a picture of him with his friends and brothers holding up these belts. So then I found out his name, and I was able to find an email. I reached out to him. He responded right away. We got together on Skype, and we're literally just sitting here talking. And it took a while because, being from Nigeria, his English is good, but it's, some of the things maybe I couldn't understand what he was saying all the time, or he couldn't necessarily, and the internet connection was off at times, being, all the way across the world and stuff like that. So that was an interesting conversation, but he is such a fun guy. And, I still watch his videos, and they crack me up because he puts so much time and effort into those. And it's just for the fact that he enjoys doing it, and it gives him an outlet to, enjoy life. So I think it's great. And the fact that he's never seen a show live, I think is just a crime. If I could get him to the US to see a show, or get the WWE to go to Nigeria and put on a show, man, I think that'd be a great documentary for them to film.
Yeah, no question. Much like so many other fandoms or parts of pop culture, there's something to be said about how pro wrestling has affected and impacted so many people across the world. You look at
Yes.
how WWE and AEW, they're selling out shows in Europe, doing
Hmm.
shows in the United Kingdom, doing shows in Germany and France, and being able to touch the lives of so many people. And you're talking about the guy from Nigeria. Um, I think it's incredible how such an art form like pro wrestling has, you know, put the smiles on people's faces
Yeah.
from people from all over the world. I mean, it
Yeah.
really is fascinating.
Yeah, and the commitment that they have to watching the product. I mean, he was telling me they stay up till 2 and 3 in the morning just to watch a Raw and SmackDown, and that people literally will go to work and come home from work just to catch Raw or SmackDown at 2 a.m. in the morning on a weeknight. And I'm just like, that's commitment, because we get the pay-per-views every now and then, or the premium live shows where they're from Saudi, and I hear fans complain, oh, we got to get up at 7 a.m. or 6 a.m. to watch this. And I'm like, after hearing his story, I don't complain. I'm like, oh, I don't mind getting up at 6 a.m. It's all good.
When you're watching the product and when you're covering the product, it's almost like it's a different feel from
Yes.
somebody that's just a fan, because
Yeah.
you have to really pay attention to when the event starts and begins,
Hmm.
and but also, you know, now that everything's so on demand, you could watch it at any time. So
Right.
I think that's pretty cool, though, to be able to have that opportunity because back 20 years ago, the only way to really watch it was live, or
Yeah.
if pay-per-view uh, subscribers or the pay-per-view companies, they would have to present it like a special on-demand version later on in the week. But you could watch any kind of premium live event at any point
Hmm.
now with the internet and being able to do that. So it's amazing how technology works, but it is a commitment because
Yeah.
you have to if you really love something, you have to find a way to be able to tune in and watch.
Yeah. And you mentioned the internet. That it's a great tool, but it also can be a hindrance, because those of us who may have to work on an evening, like there'll be some Monday nights or Friday nights where I'm out covering, especially during fall, covering football. And I come home at 10 or 11 o'clock and I want to watch SmackDown. If I log on to Facebook, it gets spoiled within a minute. Just, scrolling through my feed, something pops up. I'm like, man, that, so it does sometimes take away the enjoyment, but overall, yeah, it's a great tool to have to be able to follow the product if you miss it live.
And you've been covering sports and wrestling and entertainment for so many years. What was it about writing that made you go, I really want to do this for a living?
As a kid, I was very quiet and shy. And in a way, I still am. I'm kind of an introvert. And the only way to get my feelings and emotions out was to put them on paper. And I can remember writing all these different stories as a kid and always wanting to have people read them. And I was always writing speeches for people for student council elections and things like that because I just had a way with words. And as I got older, I just knew that I wanted to be in the media. I love journalism. I'm a huge uh, advocate for the First Amendment and freedom of speech and freedom of press. And we live in a time right now where that's being threatened big time. And I've been to events where reporters have been removed simply for not agreeing with a person, and that's not right. And we're in a time where we really need great reporters, and we need people who are objective and can keep their feelings out of reporting the story. And it's hard because I've been there. Being a sports fan, there's been times where I've had to cover teams that I really like, or I might know the coach personally, and it's hard sometimes to keep your feelings out of it. But that's part of the job. And over the years, it's become a lot easier for me. When I was younger, it was hard,
Really?
but I've learned how to turn that off at times. And does it take away the enjoyment sometimes? Yeah, it does, because I'll be there on the job, but I'm also a fan. And I wouldn't be there doing that as a job if I wasn't a fan, because there's so many other things you could do that you could make a lot more money at and have a job that's a lot easier, because there's a lot fewer journalism jobs now. So it's a very cutthroat industry. And but I'm a big advocate for it, and I love it. And there's nothing else I'd rather be doing than writing.
What has been your favorite part about being a writer and a journalist?
I think doing this book right here, honest to God, I want people to read it. I want it to spread like wildfire. I really do. I think it's that good. It's an easy read. It's 145 pages, and the people who have read it so far, they love it. The people involved whose stories I tell, they are excited for it. It's meant a lot to me. I've gotten to do a lot of things. I've been fortunate to be able to cover professional teams, different events, title games, president visits. I've been able to interview several different presidents, and those are great. It's fun. But doing this book, because I think it's just so personal and it just has such a deep meaning to me, has been one of the highlights of my career.
Yeah, and the fact that you're able to tell these stories and have pro wrestling as a backdrop,
Mhm.
um, I think that's so cool. And um, you talk about the wrestling club. You've also been able to bring your love and share your love of pro wrestling to these students.
Yeah.
Um, wh- tell me about how you're able to use lessons from pro wrestling and apply them to teaching.
So years ago when I taught middle school, I remember a lot of our students were really struggling with writing. It was just something that was very difficult for a lot of them to grasp. And I struggled with teaching it at times because with teachers, especially you see this with math teachers more, they know the subject so well, especially with numbers and things, but it's hard for them to get that across to students. I was just talking to some students the other day, and they were in my class saying how they didn't like this one teacher because he didn't teach them correctly. And I said, well, I didn't even know what they were talking about. I said, it's math, right? And they said, yeah. And I said, math teachers, as a general rule of trade, some of them struggle with getting the content across because they know it so well. They just are in that mindset that others learn like them and know that, you know, stuff too. And for me with writing, it was kind of the same way. It's like, how do I get this across to my kids so they can be better writers rather, you know, other than doing it for them, which I didn't want to do. I wanted it to have their own flair to it. So it was difficult, but incorporating things like pro wrestling not only got some kids who didn't want to write, it got a lot of kids to read. You know, I here in town one day I was going through Burger King to pick up a burger for my dog, and when we got home there was a bunch of napkins with writing on them. I'm like, what is this? And it was a note from a guy who worked there who I had as a seventh grader. And on there, he talked about me talking about wrestling and how it got him to start reading. And now he reads 2 or 3 books a month. And he never had picked up a book till he had my seventh grade class. And I have no idea the lesson he was talking about. I don't remember it, but just things like that. It's like I had an impact on this guy. You know, he's 27 years old now, and he still remembers being 12 years old when I taught that lesson. And I have the same memories about teachers from when I was a kid that had certain lessons. And I remember I'll run into them occasionally and I'll tell them about those lessons. They have no idea what I'm talking about. And I get it. When you're doing it every day, 7 classes a day, it all comes together. So you just don't remember.
When you're teaching now, has there been any, do you have like a recent example of something that you've used to kind of correlate pro wrestling with in class?
So I have used my book. The first book I used to try to kind of motivate some students because, especially at the high school level, I get a lot of male students who just aren't motivated. They go to their shop class and that's what they enjoy, and they're like, well, I don't need to know this English stuff, or I don't need to know, you know, characterization and all the traits from this book. So I try to relate some of the stories that they're reading. I'm trying to remember, like they were reading To Kill a Mockingbird. That's a tough book to try to relate to pro
It is.
wrestling, but it can be done. I talked about when Big E or when Kofi Kingston won the title at WrestleMania 35, just how that kind of bridged the racial gap and was because I tell them, you know, I was there in New York that night and I look over and there's a guy crying. And I looked at him, I said, dude, what are you crying for? He goes, this is the first time a guy that looks like me has carried this title. And I'm like, wow, that is, you know, powerful. So I always talk about that when we talk about racial relations. And some of the kids get a kick out of that. You can break everything down to pro wrestling. And I'm like, in a sense, you can, because pro wrestling imitates real life. If it's a great story, it imitates real life.
Exactly. I mean, case in point, Cody Rhodes and Roman
Yep.
Reigns. I mean, that
Yep.
was such a huge, huge story that they were telling.
Mm-hmm.
And Roman had such an incredible run as champion, and Cody Rhodes had this triumphant return. Everybody wanted to see him win the title in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
He lost, but he won it the following year. Um, and it's something that I feel like fans will never ever forget.
Right. And to see a story like that that was stretched out for 2 years, I don't know if we'll ever see anything like that again. I mean, that's you because now the companies have to have the faith from the networks. And with ratings and everything like that, sometimes that can be a tough sell. So I don't know if we'll see any 2 year storylines quite like that anymore that bring in so many different aspects from the bloodline to Cody himself with his dad. The story with Dusty and Cody, just to me, that sells it by itself.
Hmm.
But then you bring in The Rock, which was kind of we didn't, I don't think we expected that. And for him to come in and do a total 180 with his character to the final boss, who is just a vile person to Cody, we'd never seen that with The Rock. And I think that just showed The Rock's, ability as an actor and a performer.
Yeah, like his range, expanded
Yeah,
once he turned heel, and you
yeah,
saw that in his promos. And it'll be interesting to see what kind of happens now. Now you
hmm
have John Cena in the picture. This
right,
is his final year, so will he get the 17th title win? Who knows? But
yeah,
I think it's so cool how we've both been able to go to these shows, have these memories, and are able to recount some stuff and tell them to our friends and share them and be able to
hmm
have platforms to be able to do this because
yeah,
uh, it keeps the business going, it keeps
hmm
engagement going, and hopefully it continues to grow in the future. Um, do you think you'll eventually write a part three?
I was asked this the other day, and in the book I addressed that. Um, I don't think so. I think this, for me personally, this represents the end of a chapter in my life. Um, because doing this book, so much changed for me. When I started it, I was unhealthy. I was not happy with the way things were going for me. And because of this book and the people I talked to, it motivated me to change all that. And I am honestly a totally different person physically and mentally now than what I was a year and a half, 2 years ago when I started this book. So it's an end of a chapter. I'm looking forward to the next one. I am going to write another book. I don't foresee it being pro wrestling based, sports based, most likely, because that's where my passion lies. So and as a writer, you have to write what you're passionate about because, and I've talked about this with the first book. I'd started other books before and I couldn't finish them because I would get to a point where I'm like, this don't mean anything to me anymore. The first book meant something to me. This one especially means a lot to me. So I don't know what the next topic's going to be for sure, but I just know that I probably have closed the book on pro wrestling unless something would pop up where it's more of a telling someone's life story. That is something I would be interested in, writing someone's biography. I think that would be awesome.
If you could pick a pro wrestler to write a book on,
Oof,
who would it be?
man. That is a good question because there's so many. I would go with the one that would be easiest for me personally, being from St. Louis. I think I'd have to pick Randy Orton. And
Hmm.
he has a pretty interesting story. So I would probably go with him.
I could totally see that for sure happening. Well, before we wrap things up, what is it about, telling these stories and being able to talk about them that gives what is it about the telling these stories that gives you the most joy?
Being able to hear from people that it had an impact on them. Um, I've gotten so many messages from Emily, from the Pollingers. I write about their son in this book, just how proud of it they are. Maz Adams has messaged me. He's an artist for WWE. I tell his story. He thanks me all the time for telling his story. You know, just hearing that it means something to those individuals, and the fact that they will always have something that tells their story out there. Like this is forever. People can go to the library and read this or go pick it up or whatever, but it's always going to be there when we're long gone. and there's a new generation of wrestling fans. Who knows how they'll be watching it or where it'll take place, maybe on the moon or Mars for all we know, but they'll still be able to pick up one of these books and read one of these individual stories. So I think that is, what's most meaningful about it.
For sure. Jeremy, I want to say thank you for coming on again to Wrestling with Heart. It means a lot to me and to my listeners and viewers that are watching this on YouTube. Where can people find more about you on social media and how they can get the book?
Yeah, so you can go to Amazon right now and get it in print or ebook. You can go to barnesandnoble.com and get it in hardback. I got a special hardback edition that just released Friday. I haven't even looked at it yet. I haven't got it, but it's all color because the paperbacks are in black and white. So there's like over 30 photos in this new one, which is what a lot of people had requested. They wanted to see more photos of the people. So I put 3-4 photos of each person, and the hardback is color, and you also get it in paperback. And then you can also go to my website, jeremyhousewright.com, order it there. You can find me on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, and even TikTok till they shut it down. I guess I'll be hanging out I do a lot of trailers for the book. I have about 12 of them that I've put together, and I'll be sitting around and I'll do it on my phone. I never did TikTok. I'm not a TikTok person, but I had read that it was so easy to do that, and it literally is. I sit at my phone and just take pictures of the people that I wrote about and do it and put it out there, and I've been getting thousands of views, man. It's crazy how it works. Awesome. It blows my mind. So yeah, you can find me at all those. And if you want a signed copy, just find me on social media and send me a message, and I can ship you one.
Oh, that'd be great. Awesome. Thanks again, Jeremy. And I'd love to have you back on. Maybe, who knows, if you write that book on Randy Orton, maybe we'll do it. We'll do a third interview.
Yeah, that would be awesome, man.
All right. Thanks again.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. This is Wrestling with Heart. I hope you found this podcast to be informative and entertaining. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and look out for the next edition.